what's going on, guys? It's me, Train Man, and welcome back to episode whatever this is of the Zombie Train. We are... where are we? We are working on Lambit, or Galgora to Lambit, as we did before. And this time we do... well, this episode is primarily in two parts. Part 1 is mostly terrain work, and it's kind of basic terrain work. It's not really anything really significant. Because, frankly, I'm not entirely sure what I want to do yet. And then part 2 is track work. So we get the track work done, and that means we're done with track work for this section. At least as far as... well, pretty much as far as things go. I did realize how important the Galgora ledge water tank, which is what it's called. I do realize how important that is. Now that I understand that we don't have any servicing facilities down in Galgora at all. So, we need to make adequate use of our resources, and one of the things is I have to remember where to put coaling towers and things like that in these areas. Oh, so I made a little bit there and didn't like it. Now this is at 4 times speed, this whole episode, because I did about 2 hours and condensed it down to under 30 minutes. And that's that, and once again we're building riverbank here. The problem is, what I think is going to happen, I think this area is going to look pretty good once it's done, but I'm really not sure how to get it to that point. So instead we kind of have this area which is going to have some vague shapes by the end of this episode, and nothing really significant. Now something else that's worthy of note is the gradients. Now originally this was supposed to be a marginally easy section of the route, and by all means it's almost an easy section of the route. You've got I think you've got 2%, which for narrow gauge, at least around here, isn't bad at all. And then you hit a little section of 3% when you're entering the forestry. Now, the reason that is frankly because I ran out of room. I didn't think I would with all this extra track, so the reason things got so tedious and I didn't do even more work is that I got fed up with redoing the elevation, the gradients on the track, twice. So that was frustrating. Anyways, we come over here, we measured this height, and once again, that's all subject to change. But we come back, and I wrap around over here and I start laying down track, and I try to follow that. Oh, well, actually I lay down a blanket baseline first, following this black line rather closely. We end up laying a considerable number of baselines, but frankly I think the more baselines we lay down, the more understanding we will be of exactly what's going on in this section of the map. Now, I kind of relish the fact that this line was broad, this marker I made, and I tried to stay in it, and that was really my only goal. Now, there are some wobbles here and there, which are things I'm going to have to explain with the terrain, and that's hopefully something I'm getting better at doing. Although I've been more or less planning ahead in terms of stuff like that, and on the Iron Horseman route at least. The Iron Horseman route has kind of been my place to experiment with different terrain styles. And frankly, I think I've found a decent hybrid style, except it takes... we're going to be using it here, by the way, but it does take a significant amount of time. Now, this hybrid style goes something like this. First, you start out with a track, like we do. Then you plot out the major points and use the terrain tracks on them, wherever applicable. And this is for non-fiddly bits. Terrain tracks is for big planar sections, pretty much only. And then you go over those big planar sections with a raise or lower tool, depending on what kind of terrain you're gunning for. Now, aside from that, there isn't much else to this practice yet, but I'm sure we'll get there eventually. I'm trying to find something that's both rewarding and not ridiculously time-consuming, which turns out to be just about... you gotta pick one or the other these days. So, for the sake of time, and this has kind of become my more arcadey route. I don't know what I'm really going to do with the Timberwolves of Anaconda. I know it's kind of gathered a following, sort of, but I build more of it, and it's like, I'm not really sure if I like this place anymore. At the very least, a lot of it could deserve redoing, and I could definitely figure out exactly. I'm definitely figuring that out. What can be done where, thanks to this, and thanks to the Iron Horseman Chronicles as well, for figuring out the amount of baseboards I need to climb a certain amount of distance. I found out that however many baseboards I just built isn't sufficient to climb a grade of 100 feet at 1.5%, so I had to throw some almost 2s in there, which I felt bad about because I'm trying to limit the Iron Horseman Railway to 1.5%, except for the pass, which is up to 3. But this is another lesson in that same category with running out of room, and you'll see that I do, and I get a little bit frustrated, as I've said, at this. But a lot of this episode is exactly what I'm doing here, and that's building the terrain up to the proper height. It does take a lot of work. It takes a lot of it's quite time consuming to build these grades. As you can obviously tell from watching these videos of me slowly but surely building these grades. And the way to do it most effectively to get the least variation, first of all, that tool, the gradient tool, is some shade of worthless. I don't even know. But here we go, building this. But to be most effective, what you've got to do is you raise one and then you ripple that effect down the line. And then, because it'll prevent the fluctuations caused by moving nearby spline points to affect that spline point, or to affect that gradient as much, which is kind of the problem that I continually run across with adjusting something to say 1.5% and adjust the thing next to it. And I adjust said thing next to it, and it makes that 1.5% 2%. Then I have to go back and fix that, and it's just this kind of resonance effect that, of course, eventually dies down, but it ends up being quite time-consuming. So here we are, we're getting into the gorge, and I think there aren't very many small tunnel entrances, and that's something I don't like. The tunnel entrances, I think, are too large in this game, and the other ones are just kind of wonky. Frankly, I'm not sure. I don't know exactly how those things work, but I've tried to use the not tunnel tracks, the ones that are just like a tunnel entrance, and then you attach a track to it. I've tried to use that multiple times to no avail. I really don't know what I'm doing there, so I'm not going to try and use that here either. But it's just that kind of thing where I was like, oh, this sounds like it'd be... Okay, that just sounds like it'd be, interesting and kind of cool looking. And quick update from TJ involving a steam engine that he talked about, and that I helped him build. If you recall from a couple of episodes of the Terminus ago, he built a boiler with my help, and it's apparently going to the State Science Fair, so I hope he can talk about that on Saturday. I'll text him back and tell him that right now. It seems like I always get these related messages while I'm recording this. Thankfully, my hands don't have to be busy. Be sure to talk about that on Saturday. And that's Speak to Talk, which is handy and helps me not spend time pushing buttons and lets you know what I'm texting my friends, which is kind of creepy if you think about it. But it's okay, because the NSA already knows. Back to the situation at hand, however. We're not ballasting, but we're putting the bottom on this river, and the sides of this river are kind of a very good indication of what I'm going to try and make this thing look like, this kind of valley that we're working at here, because it's not like eye-popping green, it's a different kind of green. It's what's the word? It's a lush. Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. It's a lush valley, and I think it looks good the way it is, and it looks kind of beautiful. And if we can continue doing stuff that looks like this, it'll add a lot more credence to this route. Now this route has some nice looking areas, and it has some not so nice looking areas. And this is unfortunately not the kind of thing that, because I'm putting it out week to week, it's not something that I can sit around and ponder exactly what something's supposed to look like. Which is why at the same time I'm not spending as much time on this as I am on the Iron Horseman Chronicles, because that's the kind of thing where I can load that up and I can sit there and I can, build a tiny piece of something and go, no, I'm not sure, or I can spend, hours doing the same thing. And frankly, I'm really not, God damn it, TJ. I'm really not sure how this is going to, how this whole thing's going to work out, and that is going to work out. See, that's when I gave up on terrain tracks right there. Not forever. I just mean, in that section I was like, no, this is bad. What am I doing? It's bad. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so I put a wiggle in this river because I thought it was boring. And we're going to have to deal with the adjustment of that mountain right there. And of course, we're probably going to go with terrain tracks and make it a plane. And then we're going to come in with a lift and a either raise or lower tool, or a raise and lower tool, to make it something good looking and interesting looking and varied instead of a flat slope like this is right here. Except there comes a point where the terrain tracks only really work well on a very large scale, and that's with things that aren't quite so jagged and aren't quite so, what's the word I'm looking for? Detailed, of course, because terrain tracks are the master of flat, and they can make an area a flat slope, and that becomes something that is something that becomes particularly difficult in certain cases. So we come along the bottom here with this texture, and of course we come along the side here with this texture, and this is something that's going to take a little while to get right. So I did this, and of course I don't spin it, because it's not the kind of texture that you spin. And we're just going to have to intersplice the rock and the grassy rock carefully to make things look good. Also, we may have to adjust this area using a lower tool to make it a little bit more effective when it comes to that shift. Now, I don't intend, of course, I never intended the tunnel isn't designed to be like a scene change. Now, it's kind of interesting that turned out to be what it was, but that's not originally what I meant for it to be, despite the fact that it's very blatantly that. But, okay, thinking. What am I trying to say here? Oh, so here we are building track. The episode just cut into the second part here. And whatever I was just saying is completely irrelevant now because I forgot what it was. But here we are building track. So, we make this Y switch just to make things kind of independent of one another. We have the inside track, which of course is not the main line because it runs to the lumber mill. Not lumber mill, it's a forestry. But place where they chop stuff down. And now we come in and put these spline points up on this ledge here. Now I'm not sure if we continue this ledge, but I know we don't come back to it for a little while. Or I think we don't. Let's see if I crack open the map. Because if I do, that means we're going to be working on slope. Yep, there we go. Alright, so we start with the slope on this section. And of course you may realize that this isn't connected to anything at all. But we start with the slope on this section nonetheless. And it comes out to be, I don't know what I'm adjusting it to, but I assume I'm going 1.5 or 2. No, I think it's 1.5, because I go to 2 and then I go to 3 later. A little more than 3 actually, when I kind of get frustrated. But I'm probably going to have to come back and do a little bit more with this, just to make it more interesting. The grade is, I guess, going to increase as you go up the slope, or we could have certain segments with more grade or less grade. We could do that in El Dorado. El Dorado was always a very difficult segment. just on the little part of the narrow gauge that I built, but I think it's gonna remain, it was like a 5 or 6, I think, but I think it's gonna remain a difficult segment. I might up it to 3 or 4, and then bring this down to 2 with the rest of the system. I don't know. It's kind of the thing that's still in the works. This area is still very prototype. We don't have the terrain down, of course. We don't even have the planes for the terrain down. I only have a vague idea of what's going on here. It's really just... the terrain is kind of uninteresting. It's a flat slope. It's kind of... I think this is going to be the area where if you want to drive some narrow gauge, you can just kind of sit back and drive narrow gauge instead of struggling up every hill. I think some other areas are going to be like that as well. But needless to say, this map is quite small for what it's being put out to be. Also, on that note, I'm gonna try and when I make maps again, I liked the way I made the map for the Iron Horseman Chronicles, which you guys haven't seen yet, because it isn't quite all settled. When Wybold builds his narrow gauge and gets back to me on where things are, then I can stylize the map and release it. And then you guys will be able to... Maybe we'll have a fog of war on that map, actually. That'd be kind of interesting. Let me propose these to the guys right now, because they just happen to be in a call. Just came up with... Oh wait, I'm in a call with them. I can't hear them, but I'm gonna break the single player recording. I still can't hear them. They can hear me now. I just had an idea for, in the series, we can sort of do a fog of war on the map. Like I release a stylized version of the Iron Horseman Chronicles world map, and we kind of uncloak areas as we find them in the series. Just wanted to get that down before I forgot it. I mean, it's you know, vocal record here on the zombie train, but just wanted to get that out there. Think on it. I'll be back again. So back to what I was talking about with this building. I'm going frantic now. As you notice, I'm connecting these two pieces, and we're going to find something particularly interesting here. And that particularly interesting something is that. Now, we just looked at it, and so I immediately went, ugh, and I went back here, and I went back over here, and I'm just kind of testing things. I'm testing heights, I believe. And so we start adjusting these, and I said, you know what, just screw it, we have to go back here to do that. And then basically the rest of the episode is me adjusting these spline points to figure out and fix what's going on over here. And by figure out, I just mean I didn't make it. I didn't get high enough in a short enough distance. So we're coming back. I believe we're bringing it from 1.5 or 1 to 2. So that makes it you know, either twice as high or 33% as high. That's a big change. Or, you know, 133%, I should say. That's a big difference in what this could be changing. I think it was 1.5. Anyways. Crap, I'm not looking at it again. And there we go. So we're just going to move along the line here very similar to the way we did before, except now we're already dealing with a grade. So that rippling effect that I was talking about, that you have to propagate the current spline height up the line, becomes a little bit less easy to accomplish, I guess, would be the way to do it, or the way to say it. Because you run into bits where the terrain is getting the best of the track. Even though we've beaten that in most places, now that we've raised the terrain to track, it just starts all over again. So, now we're coming up here, and you'll notice we are significantly above the roadbed, and I was getting kind of optimistic here. And we still fell short, and I was it was like Ellis Smash over here, like, well, In truth, though, I just got kind of exhausted with, you know, I've got to redo this section again, and then I just kind of threw a section up to about 3.5%, and it was like, you know what, that's good. That's good, we're done. And I ended the episode there. I could have definitely done that a little bit better. A little bit less rage quitty. But we're adjusting these. I'm still trying to keep it more or less consistent. And to be honest, that in itself is not particularly hard. It just becomes a peculiar challenge when the spline points are affecting one another, and of course changing how you're shaping the world and changing, it's just it's screwing with you. It's Anyways, so we've made it back to the canyon, adjusting these grades, and we're going to get there and see that we don't line up again. That's going to be another stint of, what in the hell? What do I have to do to get this to be right? And frankly, the rest of this episode is just a sad sob song of me not being able to line up these gradients. Frankly, though, I should have thought ahead of time about making the El Dorado Canyon section the difficult point again. I was already going to make it kind of interesting, with maybe a tunnel or something. That thought is what got me thinking about. That's what got me thinking about the fact that I can't fit the tunnel where I want to fit it. But that's beside the point. Really not sure how to make it look in the end. I feel like towards the end of the episodes, when I run out of stuff to talk about, that's when I could just have the music kick in and be like, alright, enjoy this, and speed up the thing. But of course I'd never know when I'm going to run out of things to talk about, so I never know when I'm going to run out of space, so I can't speed up the footage ahead of time, so I just don't know. And that's part of the reason why music, in the end, I deemed impractical. Of course, there were much bigger reasons than that. Maybe I just could intercut the Train Fever music, although I'm sure you guys have heard enough Train Fever music. I'm sure we all have, as a matter of fact. Especially, those of us who... Sorry, I got distracted. Those of us who have played the hell out of that game. Although, it does kind of grow on you. I feel like it's definitely grown on me, especially when I can predict what song is going to come next and be like, ooh, this is going to be X song. Sometimes I kind of wish trains had at least some sort of rhythm in the background when you're doing Surveyor, just to keep you sane. Of course, you could turn it off, but a lot of times when I'm building stuff, I'm either in a conversation, or I'm... what do you call it? I'm either in a conversation, or I'm listening to a podcast, or I'm doing something to keep myself occupied while I'm doing this. Of course, while I was doing this, I was listening to the Car Talk podcast and the Rooster Teeth podcast about the unfortunate and untimely death of Monty Ohm, if you guys haven't heard about that. But largely just entertainment stuff to keep myself occupied, and also The Patch. That came on towards the end of this. That's, of course, another Rooster Teeth podcast about video games specifically, and I learned a bunch about something. Loot system in some game that I don't remember what the name of it was. Oh, that's right, I think it was Dying Light. They were talking a bunch about that game. Still not quite sure what it is, or why it's, so wonderful. Sorry, I keep banging things on the desk. So if you notice, we're shifting this thing very slowly up. Even at 4 times acceleration, this is kind of an agonizing process to watch. And I apologize. I know you guys can read the numbers, so you can kind of see everything that's going on, but I can't, so it makes it even worse for me. At least I get to talk. You guys... nobody is there to listen to you if you're talking. Anyways, we're almost here, and I realize that, nope, this is not good. So I just keep shifting things up and shifting things over, and soon enough it's going to just be that watershed moment where I'm like, okay, well this is it, and I just go for 3% and make it messy. Anyways, oh, I flew back over here for whatever reason, and then flew over here. I think that might have been an accident. There's a good chance that that was an accident. So this is a point where I'm kind of in disbelief that I didn't make it. Because the whole time I was looking at that route, the twisty back and forth route up here, and going, oh, I'm going to have way too much room. What am I going to do? And then I don't make it. And it was like mind equals blown for a minute there, and we have that section that's poking up. But this is me coming back and making sure that everything is that way, and flailing my cursor around wildly, and then bringing these all down to like 3.5, and saying, you know what, that's good enough, and I'm going to call it a day now. But anyways, at least we got all this track work done. That means it can be used next op session. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next week. In a couple of seconds, it'll be Train Man out. Thank you for watching.